Welcome to the Totally Online Gaming Group YouTube channel, where we're going into episode 6 of my Dungeons & Dragons for Beginners series. In this episode, we're going to talk about spellcasting using a wizard as an example to help new players get a better handle on how to deal with spellcasting. But before we do that, make sure you subscribe to the channel and type subscribed in the comments below, and I'll do my best to get back to each and every one of you that does. Now, on to our main topic, spellcasting. So, you're new to D&D, and you've never played a spellcaster before. Or, maybe, for your very first experience, you want the challenge of it. Okay, not a bad idea. It kind of, jump in and just go for it. That's fine. But, there's some things you need to understand with spellcasting. So let's take a look at a little sample battle that I've thrown together, where I've pitted a wizard against a giant scorpion. So here we can see our wizard, and this wizard, little dwarven wizard here, say hi, little wizard. See as he wiggles. And he is pitted off against this scorpion. Well, the first thing we need to do is figure out who goes first. So, let's take a look at the wizard's character sheet in D&D Beyond. So here we can see the wizard's character sheet. In this character sheet, we will see that right here, they have an initiative of +1. What this means, as mentioned in previous videos, is that we use this number, added to a 20-sided die roll, in order to figure out who gets to go first in a combat. So you can either roll your own 20-sided dice, or d20, and add that +1 for your wizard's initiative modifier, or you can simply click right here if you have your character in D&D Beyond. It will then take that roll and give you your total. In this case, we got a 14. Not bad. That's compared against the enemy's total, and whoever has the higher number gets to go first. Well, let's say that the enemy, they rolled low, did not get a very high number, so the wizard gets to go first. So the very first thing that the wizard wants to do is cast a spell. So let's take a look and see what spells this wizard has. Well, in D&D Beyond, you can simply click on your little spells right here to see a list of the spells you have chosen. And let's actually zoom in on this page a little bit so we can see things a little closer. We're going to look at the spells. So here we have a list of spells. Okay. The first here listed off are cantrips. These spells are listed in order of their level. Cantrips, as we mentioned in the video that I did on definitions, are 0 level spells. Basically, these are things that you can do without a limit to how many times you can do them, but they're not super powerful. So these are the spells that this particular wizard has as their cantrips. We've got Chill Touch, Firebolt, and Light. They also have some first level spells and some second level spells. So, how do I decide what to do? Well, using the player's handbook, or whatever other source material the spells you've chosen come from, or using D&D Beyond, I can click on here, look through each of your spells. You should know your spells relatively well. Reading through them before the game and understanding them is going to help things go much, much faster. Now, this is already a 3rd level wizard, so he's got a few more spells than you necessarily would starting out at 1st level. But all of the spells that you do have, I recommend reading through them and understanding them. So let's take a look at this cantrip called Chill Touch to make sure that we understand it. It says it's a necromancy cantrip. Necromancy is the school of magic. There are several different schools of magic, from which the different spells come from. Now, it's not super important for you as a new player to worry about what school of magic each spell comes from. Just know that this is something that, as we advance through to higher level gameplay, sometimes it's good to know that, for various reasons. But we'll talk about that in a different video. You'll also notice it says cast at will. In other words, as mentioned before, this is a cantrip, and therefore you do not have just a few times that you can cast it per day. You have an unlimited number of times. Think of it kind of like unlimited ammo in a video game. I can use it over and over and over again, but it's just not super powerful. So that's why we have higher level spells. Okay. The amount of damage this cantrip does is 1d8. And, ooh, I've got a symbol here. Well, what's that mean? Well, we'll see that when we read through the description of the spell. It'll explain to us what kind of damage it does. It tells us the casting time. If you remember in the previous videos, we've talked about what things you can do on your turn during combat. You can do an action, a bonus action, your movement, and then when a triggering event happens, either on your turn or not on your turn, you can do a reaction. Well, this casting time is one action. So in order to cast this spell, that would take up your action during your turn. It gives you a range or an area of effect. So this one is 120 feet, which is a pretty good distance for a spell. And then it says components. The thing to know about components as a spellcaster is that there are 3 types. There are verbal components, designated by a V, somatic components, designated by an S, and material components, which are designated by an M. Verbal components are the spoken word. Think of it like the wizard in the movie who is spouting out these mystical arcane words. Klaatu Varata Nikto. Those words are part of casting the spell, so that is its verbal component. Somatic component indicates hand gestures. So I'll have to be able to move my hands in weird symbols I might draw through the air, or, twisting my fingers in weird directions. Kind of think maybe like the Scarlet Witch. Okay? How she uses her fingers in the Marvel movies, and they're all kind of twisting and turning around. Those you could kind of consider somatic components. Okay? Now for verbal components, you will obviously need to be able to speak. Somatic components, you'll need to have your hands free. Material components are exactly what they sound like. Little bits of material. And those things will be listed out as to what type of material components you need for that spell. It could be something like a little bit of fur from a wolf, or some sulfur, or a diamond, or whatever. It will explain to you what the material components are needed for that spell. So those are the things your character will need to have. The ability to speak if it requires verbal components, the ability to move your hands if it requires somatic, and any necessary material if it requires a material component. Duration. For this spell, Chill Touch, the duration is 1 round. So that means that when this spell is cast, it will last for that 1 round of combat, and then it is done. And then, in D&D Beyond, it will tell you the source. PHB for Player's Handbook, page 221. So if you don't have D&D Beyond, but you do have the books, you could turn to page 221 and find this spell, Chill Touch, right here, listed on that page, and all of this information listed there. Now, as far as the description, this is the meat and potatoes of this spell. It says you create a ghostly skeletal hand in the space of a creature within range. Make a ranged spell attack against the creature to assail it with the chill of the grave. So what does that mean? This is mostly flavor, but it's also telling you what you need to do. So flavor-wise, it's telling you what it looks like. It's this ghostly skeletal hand that appears right where this creature is that you're attempting to attack with it. But then it's also telling you what you as a player need to do to have an effect with this spell. You need to make a ranged spell attack. A ranged spell attack. Well, what is that? Well, I'm going to close out this information on the Chill Touch spell for just a moment, and we are going to scroll up and look right here. Spells. So here we have a modifier of +2 and a spell attack of +4. This spell attack right here for our wizard, this is what we will be adding to a 1d20 or 20-sided die or d20 roll in order to see if our spell can meet or beat our target's armor class. So let's get back to the description. It's telling us make a ranged spell attack. It's telling us to roll that d20, add that +4 we have for Chill Touch, which we can actually see right here in this description, and then compare that to the target's armor class. If we meet it or exceed it, then the spell has hit. The next part of the description tells us what happens on a hit. On a hit, the target takes 1d8 necrotic damage. So that's what this symbol is referencing. Necrotic damage. That is the type of damage. There's many types of damage that can be inflicted in Dungeons & Dragons. Necrotic obviously being one of them that we're talking about right here, but based on a weapon, you could have slashing, piercing, bludgeoning. You can have other types of damage like radiant damage, lightning damage, fire damage. All of those have an effect based on certain factors in the fight. But we're not going to focus on that in this video. We'll talk about that in a later one. So as we said, on a hit, the target takes 1d8 necrotic damage, and it can't regain hit points until the start of your next turn. Until then, the hand clings to the target. Now, it gives us some additional information about this particular cantrip. It says if you hit an undead target, it also has disadvantage on attack rolls against you until the end of your next turn. Interesting. So, understanding what this spell does, I can now see with my wizard here, if I choose to cast this cantrip at a target and I hit, I'm going to do 1d8 points of necrotic damage to it, so that will reduce its hit points some. Also, it can't heal and regain hit points until the start of my next turn. Also, if that target is undead, it will have disadvantage on attack rolls against me. So, knowing that information, this spell would be particularly useful for me if I was fighting undead creatures, because I could basically give them disadvantage to hit me, making it harder for them to hit me and do damage, which, the less damage I take, the longer I stay alive. Last thing with this cantrip, this spell's damage increases by 1d8 when you reach 5th level. So then it tells you for each of these levels what happens. When your character reaches 5th level, I go from my base 1d8, it increases by 1d8 for a total of 2d8. At 11th level it becomes 3d8, and 17th level 4d8. So if you remember, I said that, well, cantrips don't do a lot, they're kind of weak. That's partially true. Some cantrips, as you gain in level, will gain a little bit more damage, making them continue to be relatively useful even at high levels. So, That's one of my spells, Chill Touch. These are things I recommend doing, looking through each of your spells and understanding what they are all about and how you could use them. So, let's go ahead and cast a spell at our target, which is that big, giant scorpion that's facing us. Well, I think I'm going to use Firebolt, because Firebolt, well, I like that one. It's fun. This is a different one. This is an evocation cantrip, and it's going to do 1d8 fire damage if I hit with it. So let's see if I hit my target. Firebolt, listed here on my D&D Beyond sheet, I can simply click on this +4 to roll my 1d20 and see if I hit my target. Ooh, a 10. I highly doubt I hit with a 10. Well, let's just take a look at our target and see. So here we see our target. And here's my wizard, who is going to attempt to attack this target. Well, looking at my target, their armor class is a 15. So my 10 does not hit, which would mean that I've used my action to cast my firebolt at the target, and I missed. I still can do a few other things. I can do a bonus action, and I could do my movement. So let's take a look and see what bonus actions I may have as a wizard. Once again, I'm on the wizard's character sheet in D&D Beyond, and we see for bonus actions, there's not too much that the wizard has. They just have the 2-weapon fighting bonus action, which tells you that when you take the attack action and attack with a light melee weapon that you're holding in one hand, you can use a bonus action to attack with a different light melee weapon that you're holding in the other hand. Well, I did not attack with a light melee weapon, so can't really do that 2-weapon fighting. However, let's look at the spells we have available. Notice in D&D Beyond that information that we get by clicking on the spell, much of that information is listed on the character sheet right here without clicking on the spell. It tells us how many times we can cast it. For cantrips, notice they're all at will. The amount of casting time, 1A for one action. Okay. The range, what we need to hit, or notice this one, for my light spell, it says Dexterity 12. We'll talk about that in a second. The effect, which can be simply damage, and then any notes, which include duration and what components I have, okay, for that spell. There are other durations to spells other than one action. I don't see any of those here for this wizard because the spells I have chosen all have one action to cast. So unfortunately, there's not really many bonus actions that my wizard can do during this little battle. That means all he's got left is movement. In this case, because I am not right next to the creature, I'm more than 5 feet from the creature, he is going to move back because he does not want to get hit. That would then be the creature's turn, and they would come and attempt to attack and do damage, all of that stuff. Now, assuming I survive, on my next turn, I would want to try something else. Perhaps I don't like getting hit. Well, in this case, I'm going to cast a first level spell this time. I'm going to cast one called Mage Armor. Mage Armor, if you look through all its information, once again, it has a casting time of 1 action, but the difference between a spell that has a level and a cantrip is that I can only cast spells of that level a certain number of times before I need to take a rest. A long rest, or sometimes, depending on your spellcasting class, you may be able to take a short rest and regain some of those abilities. Well, here, if I was going to cast Mage Armor, in D&D Beyond, I can simply click on Cast, and notice it will mark that slot with a little red box, indicating it has been used. At my current level, which I am a 3rd level wizard in this character sheet, I have 4 1st level spell slots, which means I can cast any of these 1st level spells that I have prepared 4 times. So I could cast Mage Armor, I could then cast Magic Missile twice, I could cast Sleep. Any combination of the spells that I have prepared of that level, I could cast up to 4 times total before I have used all of my slots. So, let's say I cast Mage Armor once, and then on my next turn I cast Magic Missile at the creature. Okay? That worked pretty well. It did damage, so I cast it again. And then maybe I cast it one more time on the next turn. Now I've used all of my 1st level spell slots. That means I can't cast spells at 1st level anymore. Oh well. I also have spell slots for 2nd level. That means I could cast these instead. I can also cast some of my 1st level spells. Notice in D&D Beyond, they are highlighted in blue, and it shows you what level that spell originally came from. I can cast these at higher levels. Not all of these spells can be cast at higher levels. For example, Mage Armor, notice it is not listed under my 2nd level spell slot. So there isn't any additional effects that happen. But I can cast these, Magic Missile and Sleep, at 2nd level. So those are things to look at when you have a spellcaster. Reading through your spells, understanding what they do, understanding how many spell slots you have available to cast your spells before you will need a long rest in order to regain those spell slots, and then figuring out what you can do with those spells. Alright, that's going to be it for our little discussion on our wizard and spellcasting. I hope this was helpful to you, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you do, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on further videos in the channel. And we will see you next time.